He thought he could humiliate the royal guard and get away with it, as always. But one reckless act, one ripped metal, and his life turned upside down in mere minutes. No one could have imagined that this cruel joker would become the face of one of the most sensational court cases of the year. Want to know how arrogance led to his complete downfall? Then, let's begin. The day was bright and buzzing, the kind of perfect tourist weather that turned Buckingham Palace into a hotspot for visitors from around the globe. Among the sea of clicking cameras and chattering onlookers stood Eric Stewart, a 40-year-old American with a self-satisfied smirk plastered across his face. He was the kind of man who believed the world was his stage and everyone else mere extras. Today, in his designer jeans and an expensive white button-up shirt, he was ready for what he considered a performance. Eric had spent his life believing that rules didn't apply to people like him. A successful businessman, or at least that's how he saw himself, he thought his charm and wealth could bail him out of any trouble, and trouble is exactly what he was looking for. Spotting a royal guard standing stiff and silent in his ceremonial red coat and imposing bearskin hat, Eric felt an idea brewing. "Look at this guy," Eric muttered to himself, loud enough for nearby tourists to hear, "standing there like a wax figure. What's the point of this anyway? Does he even blink?" The guard remained unfazed, his eyes fixed ahead. His medal, gleaming in the midday sun, caught Eric's attention. It hung proudly on his chest, a symbol of dedication and honor. To Eric, it was just another prop in his impromptu comedy routine. "Hey, buddy," Eric called out, his voice cutting through the crowd's hum. "Are you even alive under that hat? Or are you just another Buckingham robot?" A ripple of amusement and discomfort passed through the surrounding crowd. Some laughed awkwardly, unsure whether to intervene or continue recording on their phones. The guard, as expected, remained stoic, his discipline unbroken. This, of course, only egged Eric on further. "Oh, come on. Is this all you do? Stand there and look important? Let me guess, you get medals for just standing still?" Eric's tone grew louder, the mockery sharper. He gestured dramatically toward the medal on the guard's chest, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's for what? Best impression of a statue?" The tension in the air thickened as Eric's taunts became bolder. He took a step forward, closing the distance between himself and the guard. Then, in a move so audacious it shocked even him, Eric reached out, grabbed the medal, and yanked it off the guard's chest. The crowd gasped audibly. Phones were held higher, capturing every second. Some people called out in protest, but Eric wasn't done. With a flourish, he threw the medal to the ground and stomped on it. The sound of his designer shoe crunching against the metal echoed louder than any of the murmurs. "See that? That's what I think of your silly little awards," Eric announced, his voice carrying over the stunned crowd. He smirked, turning to face the onlookers as if expecting applause for his performance. The guard, though visibly tense, held his ground. His training demanded composure, even in the face of such blatant disrespect. But the other guards on duty had no such obligation to stand still. Two of them moved swiftly, their boots hitting the pavement with precision. Before Eric could even register what was happening, one grabbed his arm in an iron grip, while the other expertly twisted it behind his back, forcing him to his knees. Hey, what the hell? Get off me!" Eric shouted, writhing against their hold. His face turned red, not from shame, but from sheer indignation. "You guys are taking this way too seriously. It was a joke, all right? A joke!" The guards said nothing, their expressions as unreadable as ever. One of them radioed for assistance, and within minutes the sound of police sirens broke through the murmuring crowd. As uniformed officers approached, Eric's protests grew louder. "Are you serious right now? What? Are jokes illegal in the UK? This is insane!" The officers, unimpressed by his outburst, calmly placed handcuffs on his wrists. "You're under arrest for criminal damage and public disorder," one of them stated firmly. Eric's jaw dropped. "Criminal damage? Are you kidding me? It's just a stupid medal. You guys are really blowing this out of proportion." The officers ignored him, leading him toward the patrol car. By now, the crowd had grown larger, and whispers of disgust and disbelief spread like wildfire. "Serves him right," someone muttered. "What kind of person does that to a soldier?" another added. Eric, now seated in the back of the patrol car, glared out the window as the doors slammed shut. The once cocky businessman couldn't grasp the seriousness of what he had done. To him, it was a harmless bit of fun. To everyone else, it was an act of appalling disrespect. As the car pulled away, the crowd began to disperse, but the buzz of conversation lingered. Videos of the incident had already hit social media, with captions like, "Disrespectful tourist gets what he deserves," and "American tourist crosses the line." What Eric thought would be a day of harmless entertainment was quickly spiraling into the most humiliating and consequential moment of his life. Eric didn't have time to process what was happening. Within minutes of being handcuffed, he found himself in the back of a police car, barreling through London's narrow streets. His confident smirk was replaced by a mix of confusion and indignation, though he was still trying to play it cool. "Come on, officers," Eric said, leaning forward as much as the cuffs allowed. "It was a joke. Do you guys not have a sense of humor? Isn't Britain known for its dry wit?" The officers didn't respond. Their faces were stone cold, much like the guards Eric had mocked earlier. That silence was louder than any words they could have said. The police car pulled up to a plain, yet imposing building. The courthouse loomed over him as he was escorted inside. The interior was minimalist, clean white walls, dark wooden benches, and an undeniable sense of gravitas. Eric, however, wasn't ready to accept the weight of the situation. The courtroom quickly filled with murmurs as onlookers trickled in, most of them eager to see the tourist who had insulted one of the nation's most respected institutions. At the head of the room sat Judge Elizabeth Harding, a formidable woman in her mid-50s. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and her sharp gaze could cut through the thickest of egos. She adjusted her glasses, tapping her gavel to silence the room. "Mr. Eric Stewart," she began, her voice firm and unwavering. "You are charged with public disorder, vandalism, and disrespecting national symbols. How do you plead?" Eric straightened his jacket and plastered on what he thought was a charming grin. "Your Honor, if I may, this has been blown completely out of proportion. It was just a bit of fun, you know? The crowd loved it." Judge Harding didn't flinch. "Is that your defense? That this was fun?" "Well, yeah," Eric said, leaning casually on the stand as though he were at a cocktail party. "I mean, who hasn't wanted to see if those guys ever react? I was just giving the people what they wanted." The room erupted in murmurs, some shocked, others disgusted. Judge Harding raised her hand for silence, her piercing gaze now locked on Eric. "Mr. Stewart," she said, her tone dropping an octave, "the medal you ripped from the guard's chest was awarded for exemplary service. It symbolizes sacrifice, honor, and commitment to this nation. You trampled on that symbol. Your actions were not only disrespectful, but criminal." Eric's grin faltered. "Okay, but it's not like anyone was hurt," he mumbled, now realizing his charm wasn't working. The judge continued, unfazed. "Your behavior was a direct attack on the dignity of a soldier performing his duty and, by extension, this country. It reflects a dangerous sense of entitlement." Eric shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to this. People usually bent over backward to accommodate him. "Based on the evidence and your blatant lack of remorse," the judge said, her voice cutting through his thoughts, "I hereby sentence you to 1 year of imprisonment for vandalism, public disorder, and desecration of a national symbol." The room fell silent for a moment, only for a ripple of whispers to break out. Some of the onlookers began to clap quietly, their approval growing louder as the gravity of the sentence sank in. Eric's mouth fell open. "A year? For what? A piece of metal? This is ridiculous," he shouted, his voice echoing in the chamber. The bailiffs moved in quickly, grabbing him by the arms to escort him out. He tried to resist, but their grip was firm. "This isn't over," Eric barked as they dragged him toward the exit. "I'll appeal. I'll get my lawyers on this." Judge Harding watched him go with a stoic expression, tapping her gavel one last time. Court dismissed. The fallout was immediate. By the time Eric was processed and taken to a holding cell, news of his actions had already hit every major outlet. Headlines blared, "American tourist arrested for disrespecting Royal Guard," and "Entitled tourist faces justice after Buckingham incident." Social media was ablaze with commentary. Videos of Eric's outburst and arrest went viral, with millions of views in just hours. Comments flooded in. "Finally, someone's holding people like him accountable. Money can't buy you respect. Serves him right." That guard showed more professionalism than most people ever could. As Eric sat alone in his cell, his designer shirt now rumpled and his ego bruised, he began to understand the weight of his actions. For the first time in his life, his arrogance hadn't saved him. Instead, it had landed him in the harshest spotlight imaginable. The man who once believed the world revolved around him was now just another headline in a cautionary tale about entitlement and respect.